We're getting to this Marianne story now. First, I have a video clip I want to show you. Marianne actually did an interview recently on Fox News. We're going to touch on that, and then we're going to go into these allegations that are coming from a former staff member of Marianne who is dropping some revealing things. I don't know what to believe. We'll get into all of that, but I think it's something that you need to see. But first, I want to show this clip from Case Study QB. Shout out to the case. Marianne's interview on Biden skipping NATO dinner, Biden giving Ukraine cluster bombs, and why she is running. So let's get into this first clip here.
It's not the only event he's skipping. The DNC still not scheduling any debates against his Democratic challengers, including our next guest. He really doesn't have much of a campaign yet. Democratic presidential candidate Marianne Williamson joins us now. Marianne, great to see you on the couch. Good morning.
Thank you for having me.
Your reaction to the president saying, I'm going to bail on dinner last night when you meet with allies.
Well, this is a pretty important meeting. This is NATO. He's meeting with Zelensky. So if the president says, I have work to do and I want to work on with my team on my speech, I don't fault him for that.
You know, one of the things that's going on right now, there's...
No. Let me tell you why that's problematic. Hold on, let's go back. I'm going to explain to you why this is an issue.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me.
Your reaction to the president saying, I'm going to bail on dinner last night when you meet with allies.
Well, this is a pretty important meeting. This is NATO. He's meeting with Zelensky. So if the president says, I have work to do and I want to work on with my team on my speech, I don't fault him for that.
No, I don't think this was about work that Joe Biden had to do. I think this was Joe Biden having to take a break because, again, Joe Biden is experiencing cognitive decline. I believe that's why Joe Biden didn't have that meeting. He didn't show up there. Let's be real, people. Joe Biden is hiding as much as he can possibly to not make it look too suspicious to people who don't pay attention to politics every day like I do, right? So he's hiding as much as he can to possibly like get away with it without being called out for people who don't pay as close attention. But what I think really happened is I think he didn't show up because I think, again, he's experiencing cognitive decline. I think Joe Biden is having these health issues and they're trying to hide him as much as possible to prevent him from speaking more than he needs to speak, because it seems like every time he speaks or there's a press conference that he's at, he's either stumbling physically or he's stumbling mentally or he doesn't know where he is. This is happening almost every week. So I think they're trying to hide him as much as possible, and going to a dinner is going to expose him to more people. And you're going to have to talk more at a dinner. That's what I think that's really about. So I think Marianne should have, I don't know why, don't defend him. Don't defend him.
You know, one of the things that's going on right now, there's some bipartisan criticism that the administration is going to give Ukraine cluster bombs, which are outlawed in 120 different nations, except the United States, Russia, and Ukraine. What do you think about that?
I think cluster bombs should not be used. There's a reason for the Geneva Convention, for these international laws. These are bombs which could hurt innocent children, civilians for years to come.
Because they don't all detonate at once.
Pardon?
They don't all detonate.
Absolutely. And they can have terrible, terrible repercussions even after a war is over. But they should not.
But for the people who say that they don't approve of the cluster bombs, which I don't, notice, like, why can't you expand that and say, I don't agree with bombs, period? Because innocent people are still killed. Civilians are still hurt. Why can't they just expand that? Why is it still just, oh yeah, I'm going to speak out against this type of bomb, but all the other ones are all right.
Tell us a little bit about you, your policy, why you want to run for president, and put yourself and your family through that. We see what happens to Donald Trump, and you're running against the current president.
There are many aspects of it that are unpleasant. There's no doubt about it. But there are other aspects about it that are exhilarating. And the exhilarating part is talking to the people of the United States. I don't think the people are the problem in this country. I think we need to remember that. I think there's a political system that often does more to thwart and to suppress the voice of the people than to...
This piece right here, talking to the people of the United States, this is all I'm pointing this out for a reason, you guys, for when we get to what the former staffer said, you'll understand why I'm highlighting these moments.
That are unpleasant. There's no doubt about it. But there are other aspects about it that are exhilarating. And the exhilarating part is talking to the people of the United States.
Okay, talking to the people. Someone like Marianne Williamson doesn't have to run for president to talk to the people, though. See, that's the thing. Like, she's a best-selling author. Like, she's very well known. Like, people know who she is. She ran for president before in 2020, but she sold a lot of books. She was Oprah's spiritual advisor. Like, she doesn't have to run for president to talk to the American people. That's the thing one of the things I want you to pay attention to and hold on to that.
States. I don't think the people are the problem in this country. I think we need to remember that. I think there's a political system that often does more to thwart and to suppress the voice of the people than to facilitate the voice of the people. And that's the problem we have. I believe that we have too many legislators who, when push comes to shove, do the bidding of their own corporate donors and billionaire donors than to actually serve the health and safety and well-being of their own constituents. Even when poll after poll after poll shows what their constituents want, too many legislators go against that because of what their donors want.
All right, now let's go to the second clip here by Case.
So let's take a look at the polls right now, and the sitting president's got 64% right now. He's not really campaigning much. RFK Jr. got in, isn't really welcomed on many left-wing outlets. He's got 17%, and you have 10%. How do you expect to close the gap when the president will not engage with you?
Well, it's difficult, of course, and I think many people think that the president should engage. You have a majority of Democratic voters and Democratic-leaning voters who do want to see a debate and do want to see their options. This, to me, is about our democracy. You know, Jefferson said that the only safe...
But the question is, how are you going to engage? Let's go back to the question.
It's difficult, of course, and I think many people think that the president should engage. You have a majority of Democratic voters and Democratic-leaning...
Hold on, sorry, I didn't go back to the question. Okay, here we go.
Jr. got in, isn't really welcomed on many left-wing outlets. He's got 17%, and you have 10%. How do you expect to close the gap when the president will not engage with you?
Well,
okay, how do you expect to close the gap when the president will not engage with you? That's the question. Listen to the response.
It's difficult, of course, and I think many people think that the president should engage. You have a majority of Democratic voters and Democratic-leaning voters who do want to see a debate and do want to see their options. This, to me, is about our democracy. You know, Jefferson said that the only safe repository for power is in the hands of the people. The people of the United States, particularly at a time like this, should be very aware of their options. And that's what a candidacy is. I see a campaign as a long job interview. And the voters are deciding, who am I going to hire for this job? And
so first and foremost, we'll go back just a little bit. I personally would not be quoting Thomas Jefferson. Just me. Okay. I'm not quoting Thomas Jefferson of all people, especially if you're supposed to be a progressive candidate. And then two, the question was, how do you expect to close the gap? She's gone into history about what Thomas Jefferson said. She's talked about what the voters want, that we need to respect the democracy. But I didn't hear her answer that question.
Is in the hands of the people. The people of the United States, particularly at a time like this, should be very aware of their options. And that's what a candidacy is. I see a campaign as a long job interview. And the voters are deciding, who am I going to hire for this job? And the president should debate his opponents. He absolutely should.
And
didn't answer the question, guys. So what does that tell you about the strategy and the plan? How do you expect to close the gap? How can you answer that question? So I would say, well, I plan to travel all across this country, not just to states that are the early primary states, but to every state in this country. By the way, that's what Bernie Sanders did, to get my voice out as much as possible. I plan on to go on to as many media outlets that will have me there. I plan on going out in the street and participating in some of these strikes that are happening right now. There's a writer's strike, there's an actor's strike, there's a hotel strike, there's Cop City. I plan on visiting those actions as well and getting the word out. We're going to have to hit the pavement. That's just one way to answer the question. How do you expect to close the gap? Not giving people a history lesson about what Thomas Jefferson said, or going into what voters want to have a debate. Those are things people already know. What people don't know is how you expect to close that gap, which is why they asked that question. So she didn't answer that, and hold on to that because all of this is going to make sense in a second.
It's a job where only one person gets the job, and you want it. Joe Biden says he is absolutely fit to be president of the United States when it comes to his age and mental acuity and things like that. Do you think so?
Well, you know, for me, even if he was at the top of his game, I think I'm a better candidate. Even if he was at the top of his game, I think I have better policies, I have a better agenda for the next 4 years, and I think I'm a better person to face the Republicans in 2024.
Do you think he's too old?
You know, I don't want to get ageist about it. You know, we all know this because, look, Trump is, 2 years younger, I think. Every person has to look at that and choose for themselves. We've all seen the gaffes. And also, his team.
This is how you know that she's not really going to fight. Because even Hillary Clinton said in an interview recently when she was asked that question, yes, his age is an issue. Hillary Clinton said that. Hillary Clinton wasn't afraid to call that out. And she's not running. So for Marianne, if you're trying to convince people that you're going to push and fight for the people, you got to be willing to call out Joe Biden. And you have to be willing to say, yeah, you know, I think Joe Biden's having some serious mental issues. We've all seen the video footage. This is not something that someone needs to be shy about answering unless that is not the goal that Marianne has in mind. Hold on to that piece.
Gaffes. And also, his team says, well, when it comes to decision making, he does fine. I feel that I have plenty to challenge the president on based on serious fundamental disagreements on policy. I don't need to go there.
Marianne, if anybody's watching, they'd like more.
Listen to what she said his team said. This is important, guys. Because I'm showing you something here.
About it. You know, we all know this because, look, Trump is, 2 years younger, I think. Every person has to look at that and choose for themselves. We've all seen the gaffes. And also, his team says, well, when it comes to decision making, he does fine.
So now all of a sudden we believe what Joe Biden's team says? Marianne's run for president before. She knows how this works. Now all of a sudden we're supposed to take the Biden team at their word. Why is she being so nice to the Biden administration now?
I feel that I have plenty to challenge the president on based on serious fundamental disagreements on policy. I don't need to go there.
Marianne, if anybody's watching, they'd like more information or to donate, what's your website?
Thank you. Marianne2024.com.
All right, Marianne. Thank you very much.
Thank
you. Simone, the goal is a cabinet seat or a VP. And this is something I've been wondering for quite some time. And recently, there was a former staffer of Marianne that released some information that, by the way, I did contact Jeremy Elwood. Both myself and JB did. We reached out to him to try to get him to come onto the JB and Sabby show on RBN. We did not hear back from him. So just FYI, we did reach out, but did not hear back. And also, when I went to look at his Facebook page again, that Facebook post is not there anymore. But there's always screenshots. Now, DSA Preston shared this. There were other people who shared it too. Ignore any tweets that I've thrown in the direction of Marianne Williamson. I don't fuck with people who turn their backs on the working poor of this country. Marianne fires anyone who suggests focusing on ballot access in states. She has a book out in September, Do the Math. Now, this is someone who supported Marianne. Let's see what Jeremy Elwood said. Now, Jeremy, let me go in a little bit bigger because there we go. So you guys can see it. Jeremy was a former staffer. So just listen to this. This post was on Facebook. This is not a Twitter post. It was on Facebook. It was on his Facebook page. I saw it myself, checked it again the next day after that. The post was gone. So he took a screenshot of this and posted this on Twitter. Jeremy goes on to say, Marianne Williamson, her campaign is not a campaign. It is a book tour. Here's how I know. I was the national field director. I was fired along with anyone who mentioned ballot access or field plan. This is really interesting. Her focus is only on events and social media. Now, this piece here, it is a book tour. I seem to remember my comrades at RBN saying that very early on, that that's what this was really about. I was half joking a month ago that this is a book tour. I found out on the day that I was fired that she has a book coming out in September. We're going to check that in just a second. When I brought up in a staff call that we still don't have ballot access in any state, she literally called ballot access mythical stuff. Okay. Myself, National Field Director, and my partner, Field Strategist, were let go after we toiled to make a solid national field plan and had to pivot to political director roles to fill gaps so we could finish the field plan. Give me 1 second. Just gotta. Spill the tea, Jeremy. Sorry, I'm a little stuffy. Let me turn on the fan. Okay. We weren't allowed to complete our roles because of mythical stuff. So apparently, him simply bringing up the ballot access issue, which he alleges that Marianne said that was mythical stuff, apparently that cost him to lose his position. There's more. Marianne has fired those who know how to make a campaign win and has kept and promoted those who are only event and social media aware. Book tour. Again, she has, whoops, how did I go? Where did I go? Sorry, I moved up too far. Again, she has no ballot access and she fired everyone who has any semblance of field. So let me explain the field part. So as part of campaigns, there are the people that are in the field and there are people that kind of do the desk work. I don't know if that's what you want to call it, but it is what it is. But the people in the field are the people who really, they hit the ground running. They're the ones that mobilize the grassroots. So Bernie's campaign was excellent with that, right? AOC's campaign was really good with that. They had the people in the field. Those are the people that really help get the typical non-voters to come out and support those like progressive campaigns, right? Like that's how they get them to come out and win. So the field game, or some people call it the on the ground game, is very important. If you don't have that, you have nothing. I mean, you have to have that, especially if you're running a grassroots campaign. Again, she has no ballot access and she doesn't care. Calls ballot access mythical stuff. She fired everyone who has any semblance of field. She promoted New Hampshire State Director to campaign manager. His name is Carlos. So this is where I can chime in. I'm familiar with Carlos. Actually, he was on Brianna Joy Grace. Brianna Joy Gray interviewed him early on. It was him and another, I forget the other guy, but both of them were a part of Marianne's campaign. But I knew about Carlos because he ran for office before. He's north of me in New Hampshire. He was actually he was supposed to be a speaker at our Boston Medicare for All campaign. So he was on one of the lists, things like that. He has no experience with national campaign, right? And this is not to say you have to be perfect in every way. People have their strengths. But I did find it to be a little strange that if you're running for president, the person that you chose to be the campaign manager after the other two left, okay, this is campaign manager number 3, is someone who has no experience with national campaigns. I found that to be kind of strange. His name is Carlos. He knows nothing about national campaigns. By the way, I've only worked on nationals for the past 8 years. So Jeremy has worked on national campaigns for 8 years. Nor has he any experience in the field, which is what it takes to reach voters. I told you. He goes on to say, Marianne is a grifter. Do not support her. She is here to sell her book coming out in September, and that is all she is here for. If she wanted to win, she would listen to the multitude of experts that were on her campaign before she fired them for giving advice and direction. And here I pause because I go back to the clip that we had of Marianne yelling at Marcel Dixon when he tried to correct her on the dollar amount for reparations. I don't think she realized at that time that he not only was running for office, but he's also a reparations activist. And she was wrong. And he pulled up receipts on Twitter to show her that she was incorrect. He did have his numbers right. He knew what he was talking about. But I looked at the way that she charged back towards him and was like, you don't know. And I was like, whoa, what is happening here? That was a bit much. All that charisma, all that went right out the window. I was like, whoa, honey, a little bit of heat. And just like that. So that's kind of what this reminds me of. This thing right here, fired them for giving advice and direction. I worked for her, and I'm all the more sad for it because I was duped. I thought I was more aware than that. Go ahead, Marianne. Shoot me a cease and desist because I will do neither. Your campaign has no hold because you're a grifting fraud. Well, damn. Now there's more because Matthew, who shared that, went on to say, we suffer, we have no money. We look at good policy like it's the last loaf of bread from the rotation truck. Working Americans don't deserve to be conned or played like this. F this country. Marianne is only showing her true colors when the curtains close. To any Marianne volunteer I've chatted with and found progressive community with, I think you are all great either way, but I can't continue to support a rich woman's lies. Important side note for anyone who supports Biden, I'm not here to join Biden in his fake conquests either. For anyone who's wondering about extra details, Marianne, how about you pay your former employees? Honey. So this is also, again, a Facebook comment from Jeremy. P.S. Still waiting for the $400 expense payout and the $6,000 severance payout. So it sounds like to me, Jeremy is alleging that Marianne owes him some money. And not just chump change. Note, this is not me as a disgruntled employee. I was fired on June 30th. I would have made this a lot sooner if it were just me being disgruntled. This is me being sickened by seeing that she's taken advantage of supporters while I know it has nothing to do with the campaign. She's using the money to sell a book. End of story. To clarify, even if Marianne isn't campaigning as a book tour, it doesn't change that she is firing employees who bring up good ideas and then not paying them severance. Burning the path you walk on isn't a sign of integrity in your mission. Okay. By the way, this person here, let me show you something. This Helen person, I don't believe any of that for a second. Obviously, ballot access is essential, and we were dedicated to securing it on the last campaign. Nothing would have changed for this one. Let me show you something. See, you got to check people, right? So watch this. When you look at Helen's profile, digital director for Marianne 2020. So there's that. Let's go back. Matthew went on to say, I've been told recently from former staff that they have had the same experience as Jeremy. I get where you're coming from, though. And then this person said, do you watch? Dickie McGeezek says, do you watch RBN? Now, about the book. Colin found it. So this is Colin from Indie News Network. Colin said, I guess this confirms what Jeremy Elwood tweeted. R.E. Marianne Williamson's campaign is nothing more than a book tour. And if you look here, it says The Mystic Jesus, The Mind of Love, September 12th, 2023 by Marianne Williamson. So Jeremy was telling the truth that she has a book coming out in September. So for people saying he's trying to lie, according to this, it's right there. Okay. So now we need to talk about this because this speaks to another issue. Politico had wrote about this. Marianne keeps bleeding staff. 6 more depart in internal feud. The staffers left through a round of firings and resignations. And then I just want to highlight one piece here. The departures came primarily over a fight about Williamson's ballot access operations or lack thereof. The campaign's entire 3-person South Carolina operation, which had been led by Mercurius Byrd, resigned. According to 4 people with knowledge of the campaign operations and team discussions, granted anonymity to discuss internal dynamics. In addition, Carlos Cardona, that's gentleman from New Hampshire I was telling you about, who was recently promoted to head the campaign after serving as New Hampshire state director, fired 2 national field directors and a member of Williamson's New Hampshire team, according to those same people. One of the 4, who was a current staffer, attributed the changes to Cardona stepping in as new campaign manager and just his approach to reorganizing and restructuring the campaign to be cash efficient, but also incredibly nimble on the ground in key primary states. I don't know about being cash efficient, but I know it sounds like some people haven't been paid. It sounds like someone needs to cut a check. Like, let's be clear here. I'm gonna tell you what I think is really happening. We kind of predicted this on RBN, that this was the feeling that we were getting from this, that it didn't feel like it was really, it didn't feel genuine. It did not feel genuine, right? So it looks some kind of way, man. You announce you're running for president. Now you got a book coming out in September. It's just, even if the book doesn't bother you, let's put the book aside for a second. What about these people not being paid? We need to talk about that. What about that? Now, again, Jeremy Elwood, that tweet is gone. That Facebook post is gone now from his page. So I don't know. I don't know what happened with Jeremy, but maybe he got contacted by enough people to the point where he was like, I'm going to take this down. Of course, it was too late by then because people already had the screenshots. But what I'm saying is that this is a problem. This is a big problem. Again, for those just joining, I did invite Jeremy on. Me and JB did. We invited him on for the JB and Sabby show on RBN. We did not hear back from him. So I was hoping to be able to hear from him directly. But I don't know what to tell you guys other than the fact that it looks a little sus. It looks a little suspicious. Because I haven't heard of anybody else losing all these campaign people. You heard anybody else losing all these people? Has RFK Jr. lost all these campaign staffers and campaign managers? No, Diz Kucinich is still his campaign manager. Like, this is a lot. So early on. so early on? And if this is the case, like for people who were the people who I asked you to run, what Kyle Kalinske said at Marianne, we asked you to run, we want you to run. How do they feel about this? I don't know, man. I do not know. If you have not had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. Matt Miller says, how does Biden have 64%? I don't know. I told you guys, I don't even believe that number. I don't even believe it. Katie said he probably signed an NDA. So if he signed an NDA, maybe that's why he deleted it. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Sabby spilling the tea as she is spilling the tea. That's funny. Thank you for this as well, Roger. Mythical stuff. He should have said, so was your campaign. Thank you for the super chat, Michael. Think Dr. West isn't running as an author too. I don't think Dr. West needs to do that though. That's the thing. Like Dr. West just sells on his own, like book wise. He doesn't need to run for president to write a book. She could have also tried to be a little bit more discreet about it too. Like the book coming out in September. Brian, Crystal and Kyle should be ashamed for shilling this grifter on us. No, but when we tried to tell people early on, we were like, yeah, we're not feeling this. Like we got heavily attacked. People were like, how dare you go against the one person who's challenging Joe Biden? I was like, first of all, it's early on. You don't know if anybody else is going to join this race. Second of all, Marianne was horrible on Israel-Palestine, just like RFK Jr. is horrible on Israel-Palestine. You know, there were other issues with it. And no, like, it didn't seem genuine, man. I told you it did not seem genuine. You get vibes and shit sometimes from people.